Julian Mercer's hands trembled around his coffee mug at 5:47 a.m. when he heard his 10-year-old daughter Lila sobbing behind her locked bedroom door. Through the kitchen window, he watched his wife Bianca position ring lights around their organic vegetable garden, her phone already recording another authentic morning routine for her 2.3 million YouTube subscribers. The contrast hit him like ice water. Lila never cried, not when she scraped her knee learning to ride bikes, not during thunderstorms, not even when their dog Rex died last spring. But here she was, muffled sobs seeping through inch-thick oak. Julian knocked softly. "Sweetheart, you okay in there?" Silence. Outside, Bianca's voice carried through the glass. "Good morning, beautiful souls. Welcome back to Mercer Family Mornings, where we live our truth authentically every single day." The word authentically made Julian's jaw clench. He'd been a municipal water systems engineer for 15 years. He knew the difference between clean water and sewage. Lately, everything in his house felt like the latter. "Lila, please open up." The lock clicked. His daughter's face appeared in the crack. Red-rimmed eyes, tear-streaked cheeks. She looked like she'd aged 5 years overnight. "Daddy, I need to ask you something really important." Julian knelt to her eye level. "Shoot. If someone uses your picture to sell things and doesn't ask permission, is that stealing?" His blood pressure spiked. "Who's using your picture, baby?" Lila glanced toward the window where Bianca was now holding up a bottle of organic vitamins, gesturing enthusiastically at the camera. "Mommy put my face on vitamin bottles. She said it was a surprise for you, but—" Lila's voice cracked. "The man who came to take the pictures said I was going to make lots of money for the family business, but Mommy told me never to tell you about the money." Julian's coffee mug slipped from his fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor. Dark liquid spread like blood across the boards. Through the window, Bianca waved at him with a brilliant smile, pointing at her phone screen. Even from 30 feet away, he could read her lips. "My amazing husband, Julian." But Julian wasn't feeling amazing. He was feeling like a man who just discovered his foundation was built on quicksand. That evening, while Bianca edited her morning content in their home studio, Julian sat in his garage office reviewing water treatment reports. But his mind kept circling back to Lila's tear-stained face and her question about stolen pictures. He opened his laptop and typed "Child Image Exploitation Laws, Oregon" into the search bar. What he found made his hands shake. Using a minor's likeness for commercial purposes without proper consent and compensation structures could constitute both identity theft and child exploitation. The penalties included federal charges. Julian's phone buzzed with a text from his brother Marcus. "Family dinner Sunday? Bianca mentioned you've been stressed about work lately. Maybe we should talk." Marcus Mercer, 2 years younger than Julian, had always been the charming one. Community college dean, master's degree in education, volunteer youth mentor. Everyone loved Marcus, especially, Julian was starting to suspect, his wife. Sunday dinner at the Olive Garden felt like performance art. Marcus arrived 20 minutes late, apologizing profusely while hugging Bianca just a beat too long. Julian watched his brother's hand linger on his wife's lower back, watched Bianca's face light up in a way it hadn't for Julian in months. "So, Jules," Marcus said, cutting into his chicken parmigiana, "Bianca tells me business is booming. All those brand partnerships must be bringing in serious cash." Julian hadn't heard about any brand partnerships. He glanced at Bianca, who was suddenly fascinated by her salad. "What kind of partnerships?" "Oh, you know," Marcus waved his fork casually. "The vitamin thing, the organic soap campaign, that European travel series." "European travel series?" Bianca's foot found Julian's shin under the table, a warning kick. "Marcus is exaggerating," she laughed, but her laugh sounded like broken glass. "Just some small collaborations. Nothing worth boring you with technical details." After dinner, Julian excused himself to the restroom, but instead stepped outside to make a phone call. Oliver Chen had been his friend since college, now worked as a forensic accountant for the IRS. If anyone could help Julian understand his family's finances, it was Oliver. "I need a favor," Julian said quietly. "Something doesn't add up with Bianca's business income. Can you run some numbers?" "How unofficial are we talking?" "Completely off the books. I just need to know if my wife is hiding money from me." Oliver was quiet for a moment. "Email me her social security number and business details. Give me 48 hours. When Julian returned to the table, Marcus was showing Lila something on his phone. His daughter was giggling, the first genuine laugh Julian had heard from her in weeks. "What's so funny?" "Uncle Marcus showed me pictures from Paris," Lila beamed. The hotel had a pool on the roof and everything looked like a fairy tale. Julian's blood went cold. When did Uncle Marcus go to Paris? Marcus and Bianca exchanged a look so quick Julian almost missed it. Last month, Marcus said smoothly. Educational conference, boring stuff. But Bianca's face had gone pale, and Julian remembered now. Last month, Bianca had taken a girls' trip to visit her college roommate in Seattle. She'd been gone for 6 days, the same 6 days Marcus was apparently in Paris. That night, Julian couldn't sleep. He lay in bed listening to Bianca's steady breathing, studying the ceiling fan's rotation, feeling like a stranger in his own life. At 3 a.m., he slipped downstairs to his home office and began digging. Credit card statements showed charges he didn't recognize. High-end hotels, expensive restaurants, first-class flights. All under his name. But he'd never made these purchases. Julian's hands moved faster across the keyboard, cross-referencing dates and locations. Paris. 6 days in March. 2 plane tickets purchased under Julian Mercer's credit card. But Julian had been in Portland the entire month, working on the new water treatment facility project. Someone had been using his identity, someone who had access to his personal information, his credit cards, his social security number. Someone he trusted. Julian opened Bianca's laptop. She'd never bothered changing the password from their wedding anniversary. Her email inbox was a treasure trove of confirmation numbers, hotel receipts, and brand collaboration agreements. But it was the video file buried in her desktop folder labeled B-roll footage that made Julian's world tilt off its axis. The file was time-stamped from last month, a shaky phone video of a hotel room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Eiffel Tower. Bianca's laugh echoed from the speakers as the camera panned to show Marcus emerging from a bathroom wearing only a hotel bathrobe. "My real family," Bianca's voice cooed from behind the camera. Marcus walked over and kissed her. Not a brotherly kiss. Not a friendly kiss. A lover's kiss, deep and hungry and completely devastating to everything Julian thought he knew about his life. "When we make this official," Marcus murmured against her lips, "Lila's going to love having a dad who actually pays attention to her." "Soon," Bianca whispered back. "Once the brand deals go through and we have enough money to make the transition clean, Julian won't even fight for custody once he sees how much better our life is." The video ended. Julian sat in the dark, staring at the frozen final frame, his wife and brother embracing in front of a Parisian sunset, planning his replacement. His phone buzzed with a text message. Oliver. "Found some interesting discrepancies. Can you meet tomorrow morning? And Jules, bring a lawyer." Julian deleted the text and closed the laptop. He walked upstairs and stood in the doorway of Lila's room watching his daughter sleep. Her face was peaceful now, free from the worry lines that had been etching themselves deeper each day. Whatever happened next, Julian would make sure Lila never had to worry about being used again. But Marcus and Bianca, they were about to learn what happened when you stole from a man who understood the importance of clean water versus poison, and Julian was done drinking poison. The next morning, Julian sat across from Oliver at a downtown coffee shop, watching his friend spread financial documents across the small table like crime scene evidence. "Your wife has been busy," Oliver said, adjusting his glasses. "In the past 8 months, she's opened 3 business accounts under variations of your name: Mercer Family Enterprises, Julian Mercer Productions, JM Brand Solutions, all using your social security number." Julian's coffee grew cold as Oliver continued. "She's received over $400,000 in brand partnership payments, none of it reported to you, all of it funneled into accounts you don't have access to. Technically, this constitutes spousal identity theft and tax fraud." "What about my brother?" Oliver pulled out another folder. "Marcus Mercer has been co-signing on travel expenses through the college, claiming educational conferences that don't exist. The Paris trip, billed as a European Education Summit. The college paid for 2 tickets and hotel accommodations for what they believed was Marcus plus 1 colleague. The colleague was my wife. Using your identity, yes, this is federal wire fraud, Julian. Both of them could face prison time." Julian stared out the coffee shop window at the Portland skyline. 15 years ago, he'd married Bianca in a small ceremony overlooking Mount Hood. Marcus had been his best man. They'd promised to build a life together based on trust and family values. Now his family was a criminal enterprise, and he was the unwitting victim. "There's more," Oliver said quietly. "The vitamin campaign your daughter mentioned? Lila's image is being used to market supplements across 17 different brands. The contracts show projected earnings of over $2 million over the next 3 years. None of the compensation is set aside for Lila. It's all going directly to Bianca's hidden accounts. Julian's vision went red around the edges. They're stealing from my daughter. Essentially, yes. Child exploitation laws in Oregon are very clear about this. What they've done is a felony. Julian pulled out his phone and called the law offices of Patricia Vance, the most ruthless family attorney in Portland. Her reputation was simple. She won, and she made her opponents wish they'd never been born. Miss Vance, this is Julian Mercer. I need to discuss a custody case involving fraud, identity theft, and child exploitation. How soon can we meet? 3 hours later, Julian sat in Patricia Vance's corner office overlooking the Willamette River. She was a small woman with silver hair and the eyes of a shark. Mr. Mercer, what you've described constitutes grounds for emergency custody orders, criminal fraud charges, and civil restitution claims that could bankrupt both defendants, she said, reviewing Oliver's financial analysis. The question is, how aggressive do you want to be? I want them destroyed, Julian said quietly. Legally, financially, socially, I want them to understand what it feels like to have your life stolen. Patricia smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. I can work with that. But first, we need more evidence. Your wife and brother don't know you've discovered their activities yet. That gives us an advantage. Can you maintain the pretense of normalcy for a few more weeks while we build an airtight case? Julian thought about Lila's tear-stained face, about Marcus's hand on Bianca's back, about the hotel room video. I can do better than that, he said. I can help them hang themselves. That evening, Julian returned home with a bottle of champagne and a bouquet of flowers. What's the occasion? Bianca asked, accepting his kiss on the cheek. I've been thinking about us, Julian said, setting the champagne on the kitchen counter. About our future. I know I've been distracted with work lately, but I want to focus more on family, on building something lasting. Bianca's smile looked genuine for the first time in months. Really? Really? In fact, I was thinking we should plan a family vacation, somewhere special. Maybe Europe? The color drained from Bianca's face so quickly Julian thought she might faint. Europe? Marcus was telling me about his trip to Paris. Made it sound incredible. Maybe we could do something similar? The three of us plus Lila? Bianca recovered quickly, but not quickly enough. Julian caught the flash of panic in her eyes. That sounds wonderful, but expensive. Maybe we should start smaller. Portland has so many great family attractions. Money's not an issue, Julian said, opening the champagne. Your business has been doing so well lately. All those brand partnerships must be paying off. He poured 2 glasses and handed one to Bianca. Her hand was shaking. To new adventures, Julian said, raising his glass. To new adventures, Bianca echoed, but her voice sounded hollow. They drank, and Julian watched his wife's face carefully. She was thinking, calculating, trying to figure out how much he knew. Good. Let her wonder. Over the next 2 weeks, Julian became the perfect husband. He complimented Bianca's videos, asked interested questions about her brand partnerships, even suggested she invite Marcus over for dinner more often. He's such a great uncle to Lila, Julian said one evening while washing dishes. She really looks up to him. Bianca was editing footage on her laptop at the kitchen table. Marcus has always been good with kids. It's why he's such a successful dean. Must be hard for him, being single. Does he ever talk about wanting a family of his own? Bianca's fingers froze over the keyboard. Sometimes. Maybe we could help him meet someone, set him up on a date. I don't think that's necessary, Bianca said quickly. Marcus is very private about his personal life. Julian dried his hands on a dish towel, watching his wife's reflection in the kitchen window. She was chewing her bottom lip, a tell she'd had since college whenever she was lying. You know what? Let's invite him over for dinner Sunday. Just family. We haven't done that in a while. Sunday dinner was a masterclass in psychological warfare. Julian had installed a small recording device under the dining room table, perfectly legal in Oregon, since it was his own home and his own conversations. Marcus arrived with a bottle of wine and a gift for Lila, a professional photography portfolio featuring her vitamin bottle campaign. I thought you might like to see the final product, Marcus said, handing Lila the glossy folder. You're going to be famous. Lila flipped through the images, her face confused. But Daddy, I thought Mommy said this was just for practice pictures. Julian's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Practice pictures? Bianca laughed nervously. Marcus put together a little portfolio for fun, nothing official. But Julian was looking at the fine print on the portfolio's back cover. Professional headshots by Lens and Light Studios. Commercial usage rights included. Client, Mercer Family Enterprises. His fake company, the one Oliver had discovered. This is beautiful work, Julian said slowly. Must have been expensive to produce. Not really, Marcus said, cutting into his steak. I have connections through the college. Education discount. Another lie. Julian had already contacted Lens and Light Studios. They'd confirmed a $15,000 photo shoot paid for by Mercer Family Enterprises using Julian's credit card information. After dinner, while Bianca put Lila to bed, Julian and Marcus stood on the back deck sharing a beer. I've been thinking about making some changes, Julian said, staring out at their garden where Bianca filmed her morning routines. What kind of changes? Career stuff, maybe branching out from municipal work, starting my own consulting business. Marcus went very still. Consulting? Water systems designed for private developers. There's good money in it. I could call it something like Mercer Family Enterprises. The beer bottle slipped from Marcus's hand, shattering against the deck. Shit, sorry, Marcus said, kneeling to collect the glass pieces. Butterfingers. But Julian saw the real reason for his brother's clumsiness. Pure terror. Careful, Julian said softly. Wouldn't want you to cut yourself on something sharp. That night, after Marcus left and Bianca fell asleep, Julian reviewed the audio recording from dinner. His brother and wife had been careful, but not careful enough. 3 separate instances of coded language about the transition timeline and securing the foundation before the reveal. They were planning to leave him. Soon. Julian smiled in the dark. Patricia Vance was going to love this. The next morning, Julian woke before dawn and drove to his office at the municipal water treatment facility. But instead of reviewing infrastructure reports, he spent 3 hours researching Oregon's revenge porn laws, cyberbullying statutes, and social media platform policies regarding fraudulent content. By 9 a.m., he had a plan. Julian created 17 anonymous social media accounts across different platforms. He spent the rest of the week carefully documenting Bianca's authentic lifestyle claims versus reality, cross-referencing her posted locations with credit card receipts from her hidden accounts. The discrepancies were staggering. Bianca would post videos claiming to be shopping at local Portland farmers markets, while her credit card showed purchases at high-end Los Angeles boutiques. She'd film cozy family movie nights at home. On the same evenings, she was actually at expensive restaurants with Marcus, according to the receipts. But Julian's masterpiece was the timeline comparison he created, showing Bianca's solo spiritual retreat in Washington, overlapping perfectly with Marcus's educational conference in Paris, complete with hotel registration records and flight manifests. He didn't publish any of it yet. This was ammunition, not warfare. The warfare would come later. On Friday evening, Bianca announced she needed to attend a last-minute brand collaboration meeting in Seattle over the weekend. It's a big opportunity, she said, packing an overnight bag. The kind of partnership that could really set us up financially. Julian nodded supportively. That sounds wonderful. Which brand? It's a wellness company. Very exclusive. NDA situation, so I can't share details yet. Of course. Will you be staying with your college friend again? Bianca zipped her suitcase without meeting his eyes. Probably. She might not be available, so I booked a backup hotel just in case. After Bianca left, Julian opened her laptop and checked her email. No messages about any Seattle meeting. No travel confirmations for Washington State. But there was a confirmation for 2 tickets to Vancouver, Canada, departing Saturday morning. A romantic weekend at the Fairmont Hotel, Vancouver. Room service reservations for 2. Couples massage appointments. The other ticket was under Marcus Mercer's name. Julian called Patricia Vance. They're escalating, he told her. International travel now. Still using my identity for the financial arrangements. Perfect, Patricia said. International wire fraud carries heavier penalties. How's your evidence collection coming? I have everything we need. Financial records, video proof of the affair, documented child exploitation, identity theft spanning 8 months. When do we move? Monday morning. I'll file for emergency custody based on child endangerment and fraud. The police will execute warrants for both defendants. Are you ready for this to go public? Julian thought about Lila's tear-stained face, about Marcus's hand on Bianca's back, about 2 years of lies and stolen money and violated trust. I'm ready. Saturday evening, Julian took Lila out for ice cream at their favorite shop downtown. Daddy, Are you and Mommy getting divorced? She asked, swirling her spoon through mint chocolate chip. The question hit him like a physical blow. Why would you ask that, sweetheart? Because you've been acting different, like when Tommy's parents got divorced. His dad started being extra nice and asking lots of questions about Tommy's mom. Julian set down his sundae. His 10-year-old daughter was more perceptive than he'd given her credit for. Lila, if Mommy and I did get divorced, how would you feel about that? She considered this seriously. Sad, I guess, but also maybe relieved. Relieved. You and Mommy don't smile at each other anymore, and Uncle Marcus has been coming over too much. It feels weird. Julian reached across the table and took his daughter's hand. Has Uncle Marcus ever made you uncomfortable? Ever asked you to keep secrets from me? Lila nodded slowly. He said the photo shoots were supposed to be a surprise for you. But then he said if I told you before the surprise was ready, it might ruin everything and make you sad. What else did he ask you to keep secret? The trips. He said Mommy was planning a special vacation for our family, but she needed to test out the hotels first to make sure they were good enough for me. He said if I mentioned seeing pictures of their test trips, it would spoil the surprise. Julian's grip tightened on Lila's hand. Sweetheart, from now on, you never have to keep secrets from me. Ever. If any adult asks you to keep secrets from your parents, you tell me immediately, okay? Okay, Daddy. They finished their ice cream in comfortable silence. On the drive home, Lila fell asleep in the passenger seat, her head tilted against the window. She looked peaceful, innocent. Julian made a silent promise. Whatever it took, he would protect that innocence. Monday morning arrived like a reckoning. Julian dropped Lila at school as usual, kissed her goodbye, and told her he'd pick her up early for a special afternoon together. Then he drove to Patricia Vance's office. By 10 a.m., police officers were executing search warrants at Marcus's apartment and Bianca's yoga studio. By 11 a.m., emergency custody orders had been filed in Multnomah County Family Court. By noon, both Marcus and Bianca were in custody for identity theft, wire fraud, and child exploitation. Julian sat in Patricia's office, watching the local news coverage on her television. Portland Community College Dean Marcus Mercer was arrested this morning on charges of wire fraud and identity theft, the anchor reported. Mercer allegedly used his brother's personal information to fund personal travel expenses through the college's educational conference budget. The camera cut to footage of Marcus being led away in handcuffs, his face hidden behind a jacket. In a related case, lifestyle YouTuber Bianca Mercer faces charges of spousal identity theft and child exploitation for allegedly using her minor daughter's image in commercial campaigns without proper legal consent or compensation. Julian's phone buzzed with calls from reporters, neighbors, Bianca's family. He turned it off. How do you feel? Patricia asked. Julian considered the question. Empty, he said finally. I thought I'd feel vindicated, but mostly I just feel tired. That's normal. You've been living a lie for 2 years. Your body is processing the trauma. There was a knock on Patricia's office door. Her assistant entered with a folder. The defendants are requesting immediate bail hearings, the assistant said. Both claim they're flight risks due to the international nature of the charges. Patricia smiled her sharp smile. File objections. Cite the international travel patterns and the substantial hidden assets. These two aren't going anywhere. That afternoon, Julian picked up Lila from school and took her to their old house, the one they'd lived in before moving to the expensive suburban neighborhood where Bianca filmed her lifestyle content. Are we moving back here? Lila asked, exploring the empty rooms. Would you like that? Yes, she said without hesitation. This feels like home. The other house feels like a TV set. Julian hugged his daughter tightly. Then we're moving back. They spent the evening boxing up Lila's belongings from the suburban house. Julian avoided Bianca's home studio, where ring lights and camera equipment sat abandoned like the remnants of a collapsed theater production. As they loaded boxes into Julian's truck, neighbors gathered on their front lawns, whispering and pointing. Julian ignored them. These people had never been real friends anyway, just an audience for Bianca's performance. But Mrs. Chen from 3 houses down approached as Julian was securing a box of Lila's books. Julian, I just wanted to say I'm sorry, she said quietly. We all sensed something wasn't right, but nobody wanted to intrude. What do you mean? The cars. Marcus's car was in your driveway multiple times when you were at work and Lila was at school. My husband mentioned it to me several times, but we figured it wasn't our business. Julian stopped loading boxes. How many times? Weekly, at minimum, for months. Always during the day, always when you weren't home. So the neighbors had known. They'd watched his brother's car in his driveway, watched the affair unfold in broad daylight, and said nothing. "Thank you for telling me now," Julian said. Mrs. Chen nodded and walked back to her house. Julian stood in his driveway, looking at the suburban fantasy he'd paid for with his career and his peace of mind. The perfectly manicured lawn, the expensive solar panels, the 3-car garage filled with Bianca's brand partnership gifts. All of it felt toxic now. Julian finished loading the truck and drove Lila to their real home, the modest house across town where they'd been genuinely happy before social media and brand partnerships and lifestyle inflation had poisoned everything. That night, Lila helped Julian make spaghetti and meatballs in their small kitchen. "Daddy, will Mommy go to prison?" Julian turned off the stove and knelt beside his daughter. "Probably, sweetheart. What she did was against the law." "What about Uncle Marcus?" "Him too." Lila nodded solemnly. "Good. They were mean to you." "They were confused," Julian said carefully. "Sometimes adults make very bad choices when they're confused. But they weren't confused about stealing my pictures. They knew that was wrong." Julian's 10-year-old daughter had cut straight to the heart of it. Marcus and Bianca might have been confused about their feelings, their marriage, their desires, but the exploitation of Lila's image for profit, that was calculated theft. "You're right," Julian said, "and that's why they have to face consequences." The trial began 6 weeks later. Portland's federal courthouse was packed with reporters, social media influencers, and curious onlookers drawn by the scandal of a lifestyle YouTuber's spectacular fall from grace. Julian sat in the front row with Patricia Vance, watching his wife and brother enter the courtroom in matching orange jumpsuits. They'd both been denied bail after prosecutors demonstrated their flight risk and the international scope of their fraud. Bianca looked smaller somehow, without her ring lights and carefully curated wardrobe. Marcus looked like a man who'd aged 10 years in 6 weeks. Neither of them made eye contact with Julian. The prosecution's case was devastating. Oliver Chen testified about the hidden financial accounts and falsified travel expenses. Representatives from 17 different brands testified about being deceived regarding Lila's compensation structure. Hotel employees from Paris and Vancouver confirmed Marcus and Bianca's romantic relationship. But the most damaging testimony came from Lila herself. Patricia had prepared her carefully, explaining that she would need to answer questions about the photo shoots and the secrets she'd been asked to keep. Julian wasn't sure his daughter was ready for the courtroom environment, but Lila insisted she wanted to help. "I want to tell the truth," she said. "Mommy always said telling the truth was important, but then she asked me to keep secrets. That felt wrong." When Lila took the witness stand, the courtroom went completely silent. "Can you tell us about the photo shoots your mother arranged?" the prosecutor asked gently. "She said they were practice pictures to help me become a better model," Lila said clearly. "But the man with the camera kept talking about money and how much the companies would pay for my face. Mommy told me not to tell Daddy about the money part." "Did your mother explain why you shouldn't tell your father?" "She said Daddy worked very hard for our family, and if he knew about the extra money, he might stop working so hard. She said it was a surprise to make him proud." Julian watched the jury's faces. Several jurors were parents themselves, and their expressions showed exactly what Julian felt: betrayed parental rage. "Did Uncle Marcus ever talk to you about keeping secrets?" Lila nodded. "He said Mommy was planning a special family vacation, but she needed to test the hotels first. He showed me pictures of the hotels they tested, but he said I couldn't tell Daddy because it would ruin the surprise." "What did you think about keeping these secrets?" "It made my stomach hurt," Lila said simply. "Secrets feel heavy." The defense attorneys had no effective cross-examination. How do you attack a 10-year-old for telling the truth about being exploited by her own mother? When Lila stepped down from the witness stand, she walked directly to Julian and climbed into his lap. He held her tightly while the prosecution rested their case. Marcus's defense attorney tried to paint him as a man overwhelmed by love, making poor choices for understandable reasons. Bianca's attorney argued that lifestyle influencers operated in a legal gray area and that she genuinely believed she was building a business that would benefit her entire family. Neither argument held water against the mountain of evidence Patricia and Oliver had assembled. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Marcus received 8 years in federal prison for wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. Bianca received 12 years for the same charges, plus child exploitation and tax evasion. As the bailiffs led them away, Bianca finally looked at Julian. Her eyes were full of tears and something that might have been regret. But Julian felt nothing. The woman being led away in handcuffs wasn't his wife. His wife had died 2 years ago when she chose money and Marcus over their family. This was just a stranger who happened to share his last name. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded around Julian and Patricia. "Mr. Mercer, how do you feel about the sentences?" "Relieved," Julian said simply. "Justice has been served." "Will you be pursuing civil damages?" Patricia stepped forward. "Mr. Mercer is entitled to full restitution of the stolen funds plus damages. We estimate the total recovery at approximately $2.8 million. What's next for you and your daughter?" Julian looked down at Lila, who was holding his hand and staying close to his side despite the chaos of cameras and microphones. "We're going to live quietly and honestly," he said. "No cameras, no social media, no brand partnerships, just a father and daughter building a real life together." 6 months later, Julian and Lila were settled into their old house across town. Julian had left his municipal job and started a small water systems consulting business, legitimately this time, with proper business licenses and transparent accounting. The restitution money sat mostly untouched in accounts set aside for Lila's education and future. Julian didn't want to build their new life on the ashes of their old betrayals. Lila was thriving. Her grades had improved. She'd made new friends at her new school, and the worry lines around her eyes had faded. She was seeing a therapist twice a week to process the trauma of her parents' divorce and her mother's crimes, but she seemed genuinely happy for the first time in years. On a Saturday morning in March, Julian was working in their small garden when Lila ran outside with the cordless phone. "Daddy, there's a lady on the phone who says she's from a TV show. She wants to interview us about Mommy's trial." Julian took the phone and hung up without speaking to the producer. He'd received dozens of similar calls over the past months, offers for interviews, book deals, documentary appearances. Everyone wanted to profit from their family's destruction. "Are we ever going to talk to the TV people?" Lila asked. "No, sweetheart. Our story isn't entertainment. It's our life, and we get to keep it private." Lila nodded and went back to her drawing pad, sketching pictures of their garden. Julian watched her work, marveling at how resilient children could be when given honesty and stability. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Julian, it's Marcus. I need to talk to you, please." Julian deleted the message without responding. Marcus had tried to contact him multiple times from prison. Letters, phone calls, messages through mutual acquaintances. Julian had ignored them all. Some bridges, once burned, should stay burned. That evening, while Lila was at a sleepover with her friend Emma, Julian sat on his back porch with a beer and his laptop, finally ready to tackle a project he'd been avoiding. He opened a new document and began typing, "Lila's Trust Fund, Guidelines for Access." Julian spent 3 hours crafting detailed instructions for the restitution money that would become available to Lila when she turned 18. The funds would be sufficient to pay for college, graduate school, and a substantial down payment on a house. But Julian wanted to ensure his daughter understood the source of this money and the responsibility that came with it. "This money represents something painful," he wrote. "It came from people who loved you but made terrible choices. Use it wisely, but don't let it define your worth or your future. You are valuable because of who you are, not because of what you own." As Julian finished writing, his phone rang. The caller ID showed Patricia Vance's office. "Sorry to call so late," Patricia said, "but we have a situation. Bianca's parole hearing has been moved up. She's requesting supervised visitation with Lila." Julian's grip tightened on the phone. "After everything she did?" "It's her legal right as a parent. The court will consider it, especially since she's been a model prisoner for the past year. But you have the right to object based on Lila's best interests." "What does Lila want?" "That's what we need to determine. The court will likely require a child psychologist to evaluate her feelings about seeing her mother." Julian stared out at his garden, where Lila had helped him plant tomatoes and herbs. She'd never asked about visiting Bianca in prison. She'd never asked when Mommy was coming home. She seemed content with their quiet life, free from cameras and lies and performances. "Schedule the evaluation," Julian said. "Whatever Lila wants, that's what we'll do." 2 weeks later, Julian sat in Dr. Sarah Morrison's office while Lila played with therapeutic toys and answered gentle questions about her feelings. "Do you miss your mother?" Dr. Morrison asked. Lila considered this carefully. I miss the mom I thought I had, but I don't think that mom was real. What do you mean? Everything was pretend. The happy family videos, the morning routines, even the way she talked to me when the camera was on. When the camera was off, she was different, stressed and angry and always on her phone. Would you like to see her now? I don't know. Would she still be pretending? Dr. Morrison glanced at Julian through the observation window. What would you want to say to her if you could? I'd want to ask her why she used my pictures without asking, and why she lied to Daddy, and why Uncle Marcus was more important than our family. Those are very good questions. Would you feel safe asking her those questions? Lila shook her head. She never liked it when I asked hard questions. She always said I was too young to understand adult things. After the session, Dr. Morrison met with Julian privately. Lila is remarkably well-adjusted considering the trauma she's experienced, the psychologist said. But she's also very clear about her boundaries. She doesn't trust her mother, and she's not emotionally ready for reconciliation. So, no visitation? I'll recommend supervised visitation only if Lila explicitly requests it, and only after Bianca completes extensive family therapy and demonstrates genuine accountability for her actions. Based on our conversation today, I don't think Lila is interested. Julian felt a complex mix of relief and sadness. Part of him wanted Lila to have a relationship with her mother, but a larger part of him wanted to protect his daughter from further manipulation and disappointment. That night, Julian tucked Lila into bed and sat on the edge of her mattress for their nightly talk. Dr. Morrison says I don't have to visit Mommy in prison if I don't want to, Lila said. That's right, it's completely your choice. Do you think I should want to visit her? Julian chose his words carefully. I think you should trust your feelings. If visiting her would make you happy or help you feel better, then it might be worth considering. But if it would make you anxious or upset, then there's no reason to do it. I think it would make me sad, Lila said quietly, because I'd want her to apologize and explain why she did those things. But I don't think she would. I think she'd just cry and say she missed me without taking responsibility. Julian was stunned by his daughter's emotional intelligence. At 11 years old, she understood accountability better than many adults. Then we won't visit, he said. Maybe someday in the future you'll feel differently, and that's okay too. But for now, we'll focus on our life here. Lila smiled and pulled her covers up to her chin. I like our life here, Daddy. It's quiet and real. Real. That was the word that mattered most. 3 months later, Julian received a certified letter from the Oregon Department of Corrections. Bianca's parole request had been denied based on Dr. Morrison's evaluation and Lila's stated preference for no contact. Julian filed the letter away without telling Lila. She didn't need to carry the weight of her mother's continued imprisonment. She was finally free to be a normal child, and Julian intended to protect that normalcy fiercely. But that same week, Julian faced an unexpected challenge. He was working in his home office when Lila burst through the door, her face flushed with anger. Daddy, Emma's mom showed me something on her phone. There are videos of me on the internet. Lots of them. Julian's blood went cold. What kind of videos? The vitamin commercials and soap ads, but also videos I never saw before. Videos of me playing in our old backyard, videos of me sleeping, videos of me in the bathtub when I was little. Julian's vision went red. Show me. Lila led him to Emma's house, where Mrs. Patterson was waiting with her phone and a deeply concerned expression. I thought you should know, Mrs. Patterson said quietly. Emma was researching the trial for a school project on media ethics, and she found these videos on a website called Authentic Family Moments. They're being sold as stock footage for other family brands. Julian looked at the phone screen and felt his world tilt again. Dozens of videos of Lila, intimate family moments that Bianca had secretly recorded and sold to content aggregators. His daughter eating breakfast, playing with toys, even sleeping in her bed. These were taken without Lila's knowledge, Julian said, his voice dangerously quiet. There's more, Mrs. Patterson said reluctantly. The website claims these are exclusive behind-the-scenes content from the Mercer family vault. They're charging premium prices because of the trial publicity. Julian called Patricia Vance from Mrs. Patterson's living room. We have a new problem, he said, explaining the situation. Someone is still profiting from my daughter's image. Who owns the website? I'll find out. But Patricia, I want them destroyed. Completely. I want criminal charges, civil lawsuits, and I want that content removed from every corner of the internet. I'll get our cybercrimes investigator on it immediately. This could be connected to Bianca's original network of brand partnerships. She may have sold perpetual licensing rights before her arrest. Julian hung up and knelt beside Lila, who was sitting on Mrs. Patterson's couch with tears in her eyes. "I hate this," she whispered. "I hate that people can see me without permission. I hate that Mommy sold my private moments." "We're going to stop it," Julian promised. "Every single video, every single image. I'm going to make sure this never happens again." That night, Julian didn't sleep. He spent 8 hours researching cybercrime law, digital rights management, and content removal procedures. By morning, he had a plan. Over the next 6 months, Julian became an expert in digital privacy protection. Working with Patricia's legal team and a specialized cyber crimes unit, he traced the Authentic Family Moments website to a network of shell companies connected to Bianca's original business manager, a woman named Sandra Hayes, who had continued selling Lila's content even after Bianca's arrest. Sandra Hayes was eventually charged with child exploitation, copyright infringement, and cyber trafficking. The website was shut down, and every piece of content featuring Lila was legally scrubbed from the internet through a combination of court orders and technical intervention. But the process took a toll on both Julian and Lila. She began having nightmares about strangers watching her through cameras. She became anxious about being in public, worried that someone might recognize her from the videos. Julian found a new therapist who specialized in child exploitation recovery. Slowly, with professional help and consistent support, Lila began to heal from this additional violation of her privacy. On her 12th birthday, Lila made an unusual request. "Daddy, I want to change my name." Julian set down the birthday cake he was frosting. "What would you like to change it to?" "Lila Mercer sounds too much like the videos in the trial. I want to be Lila Chen." "Chen? Like Oliver's family name?" "Mr. Chen helped us when Mommy was stealing. And Mrs. Chen from our old neighborhood was the only person who tried to tell you about Uncle Marcus's car. The Chens are honest people." Julian was deeply moved by his daughter's logic. Oliver and his wife had indeed become like family over the past 2 years, providing support and friendship without any agenda or expectation of return. "I'll talk to Oliver about it," Julian said. "If he agrees, we can legally change your name." Oliver was honored by the request and agreed to let Lila take his family name. The legal process took 3 months, but on a crisp October morning, Lila Chen walked into her new middle school with a fresh identity and a clean slate. But Julian's story wasn't finished yet. In December, 2 years after the original trial, Julian received an unexpected phone call. "Mr. Mercer, this is Agent Sarah Kim from the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. We've been investigating a broader network of family lifestyle influencers who may have been engaged in systematic child exploitation. Your case was instrumental in helping us identify this network. We'd like your assistance in bringing down the entire operation." Julian met Agent Kim at a federal building in downtown Portland. She showed him evidence of a coordinated scheme involving dozens of family YouTube channels, all using similar tactics to exploit their children for profit. "Your wife and brother were small players in a much larger operation," Agent Kim explained. "The same business manager who continued selling your daughter's content was working with families across the country, helping them monetize their children while hiding the profits from spouses and tax authorities." "How many families?" 47 that we've identified so far. Hundreds of children whose images and private moments were sold without proper consent or compensation. Your testimony could help us shut down the entire network. Julian agreed to cooperate. Over the next year, he testified in federal court against Sandra Hayes and 12 other co-conspirators who had built a multi-million-dollar industry on the exploitation of children. The network was completely dismantled. New federal laws were passed requiring strict oversight of child performers in digital media. Several platforms updated their policies to better protect minors from commercial exploitation. Julian's cooperation in the larger case earned him recognition from children's rights organizations, but he turned down all public speaking requests and media interviews. He'd learned the difference between justice and performance, and he wanted no part of the latter. On a warm evening in June, 3 years after the original betrayal, Julian and Lila sat on their back porch watching fireflies dance in their garden. "Daddy, do you ever think about Mommy and Uncle Marcus?" Julian considered the question honestly. "Sometimes. I wonder if they understand the damage they caused, or if they just feel sorry for themselves." "I think they feel sorry for themselves," Lila said matter-of-factly. "Real sorry would mean taking responsibility and trying to make things better." "You're probably right. Do you forgive them?" Julian was quiet for a long moment. I don't think about forgiveness anymore, sweetheart. I think about moving forward and building something good from what we have left. That sounds healthier than forgiveness, Lila said, surprising Julian with her insight. Where did you learn to be so wise? From you, and from learning the difference between what people say and what people do. That night, after Lila went to bed, Julian sat at his kitchen table and wrote a letter he would never send. Bianca and Marcus, you destroyed our family for money and selfishness. You turned our daughter into a commodity and our marriage into a lie. You stole 2 years of honest living from all of us. But you didn't win. Lila is stronger, wiser, and more authentic than she ever would have been in your world of cameras and performances. I rebuilt my career on actual merit instead of stolen foundations. We learned to value privacy, honesty, and real relationships over public image and profit. You taught us what family isn't. We figured out what family is. I don't forgive you. I don't hate you. I simply don't think about you anymore. We won. Julian folded the letter and put it in his desk drawer, next to the trust fund documents and Lila's name change certificate. Then he walked upstairs and checked on his sleeping daughter. Not his daughter the brand, not his daughter the content creator, just his daughter the person, dreaming peacefully in a house full of honesty. Outside, Portland slept under a canopy of stars. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new moments to choose authenticity over performance. Julian closed Lila's bedroom door softly and went to sleep himself, knowing that sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. But the universe wasn't finished with the Mercer family story. On a rainy Tuesday morning in November, Julian received a call that would test everything he'd built over the past 4 years. Mr. Mercer, this is Dr. Patricia Wells from Oregon Health and Science University Hospital. I'm calling about your wife, Bianca Mercer. She's been admitted to our oncology unit with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She's listed you as her emergency contact. Julian set down his coffee cup with shaking hands. I'm sorry, what? Mrs. Mercer was transferred here from the correctional facility yesterday evening. Her condition is quite serious. She's requesting to see you and your daughter. Julian stared out his kitchen window at the garden where Lila was raking leaves, preparing for winter. His daughter was 14 now, a confident teenager who spoke 3 languages and excelled in advanced mathematics. She'd never asked about her mother's well-being, never expressed interest in reconciliation. Doctor, I need to be very clear about something. My ex-wife has no relationship with our daughter. She lost parental rights due to criminal behavior. Any medical decisions need to go through the appropriate legal channels. I understand, Mr. Mercer. But she's specifically asking to make amends before, well, her prognosis is quite poor, perhaps 6 months. After hanging up, Julian sat at his kitchen table for 20 minutes, staring at his hands. Bianca was dying. The woman who had shared his bed for 8 years, who had given birth to his daughter, who had betrayed him in the most fundamental ways possible, was dying alone in a hospital room. He felt nothing, not satisfaction, not grief, not anger, just a hollow recognition that a chapter of his life was ending. When Lila came inside from yard work, Julian told her about the phone call. Do you want to see her? He asked. Lila was quiet for a long moment, pulling off her gardening gloves and washing her hands at the kitchen sink. Is she asking for forgiveness or attention? She finally said. I don't know. If she wanted forgiveness, she would have started by making amends to the other families her network hurt. Has she done that? Julian realized he didn't know. I can find out. If she has, then maybe seeing her would mean something. If she hasn't, then she's just scared of dying alone and wants to feel better about herself. Julian called Agent Kim, who was now working on follow-up cases related to the family influencer network. Has Bianca provided any cooperation in the ongoing cases? Julian asked. Nothing substantive. She's maintained that she was manipulated by her business manager and that she genuinely believed she was building a legitimate family business. No acknowledgement of the broader harm, no assistance in identifying other victims. So Lila had been right. Bianca was seeking comfort, not offering accountability. Julian and Lila decided together. They would not visit the hospital. But 3 weeks later, Julian received another call. Mr. Mercer, this is Sandra Martinez, a social worker at OHSU. Bianca passed away early this morning. She left some items she wanted you to have. Julian drove to the hospital alone, leaving Lila at school where she belonged. Whatever Bianca had left behind, it wasn't his daughter's burden to carry. The social worker handed him a small box containing a letter and a USB drive. Julian didn't open either item until he returned home. He waited until Lila was asleep, then sat in his home office and read his ex-wife's final words. Julian, I know you won't forgive me. I wouldn't forgive me either. I want you to know that every day in prison, I understood what I had destroyed. Not just our marriage or my freedom, but Lila's childhood and your trust in humanity. The USB contains every video, every photo, every piece of content I ever created featuring our family. I managed to get copies before the lawyers seized everything. I want you to have them. Not to profit from, but to control. If Lila ever wants to see what her early childhood looked like before everything went wrong, she can. If she never wants to see any of it, you can destroy it all. I loved you both. I just loved money and attention more, and I was too weak to admit it until it was too late. Take care of our daughter. You're the parent she deserved to have. Bianca. Julian plugged in the USB drive and found terabytes of family videos spanning Lila's first 8 years of life. Christmas mornings, birthday parties, bedtime stories, family vacations, moments of genuine happiness before cameras and brands and social media corrupted everything. He watched for 2 hours, seeing his younger self and his baby daughter through Bianca's lens. In these private moments, there was real love, real joy, real family connection. Then he ejected the drive and locked it in his safe. Someday, when Lila was ready, she could decide what to do with these memories. But that choice would be hers alone. Julian never told Lila about the letter or the videos. When he informed her that Bianca had passed away, she nodded solemnly and asked if they needed to attend a funeral. There won't be a service, Julian said. She'll be cremated and buried in the prison cemetery. That's sad, Lila said. Not that she's dead, but that she ended up so alone. Do you feel sad? I feel sad for the mom I thought I had when I was little. But that mom wasn't real, so I guess I'm mourning someone who never existed. Lila was 16 now, wise beyond her years, preparing for early admission to college. She wanted to study digital ethics and child protection law. The trauma of her early exploitation had become her motivation to protect other children from similar harm. Julian was proud of the woman his daughter was becoming, but he also worried about her carrying the weight of other people's pain. You don't have to fix the world's problems because of what happened to us, he told her one evening as she worked on her college application essays. I'm not trying to fix everything, she said, not looking up from her laptop. I just want to use what I learned to help kids who are going through what I went through. Is that wrong? It's not wrong. Just make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. What would be wrong reasons? Anger, revenge, trying to prove something to people who hurt you. Lila stopped typing and looked at her father. Is that why you helped the FBI with all those other cases? Julian considered the question honestly. Partly, yes, but mostly because I knew what those families were going through, and I wanted to help. Then we're doing it for the same reasons. 6 months later, Lila was accepted to Stanford University with a full scholarship and a research assistantship in their new Digital Ethics Institute. At 18, she would be studying alongside graduate students and professors who were developing new frameworks for protecting children in digital spaces. The night before Lila left for college, Julian gave her the USB drive and Bianca's letter. These are yours now, he said. Do whatever feels right to you. Lila held the drive in her palm, weighing it like a physical object instead of digital memories. Are they happy memories? Some of them, from before everything went wrong. I think I'd like to see the happy ones someday. But not yet. Lila put the drive in her jewelry box and closed the lid. Maybe when I'm older and have my own family, I'll want to remember what genuine family moments looked like. Julian hugged his daughter tightly. You already know what genuine family moments look like. We've been living them for 6 years. The next morning, Julian drove Lila to Stanford. As they loaded her belongings into her dorm room, other families bustled around them. Parents taking photos, students hugging goodbye, everyone documenting the milestone moment. Julian and Lila shared a quiet goodbye hug in the hallway, away from the cameras and performances. Thank you for protecting me, Lila said softly. Thank you for being worth protecting. As Julian drove back to Portland alone, he reflected on the past 7 years. He'd lost a wife and brother to greed and betrayal. He'd gained a daughter's trust and his own self-respect. He'd learned that revenge wasn't about destroying your enemies, it was about building something better from the rubble they left behind. Julian returned to his quiet house, his honest work, his authentic life. He had no social media presence, no public profile, No brand to maintain. He was simply a father who had protected his child and a man who had chosen truth over performance. That evening, he sat on his back porch with a beer and his laptop, reading an email from Lila about her first day of classes. She was excited about her professors, her research opportunities, her future. She signed the email Love Lila Chen, and Julian smiled. His daughter had chosen her own name, her own path, her own future. She was nobody's brand, nobody's content, nobody's commodity. She was simply herself, honest and whole and free. Julian closed the laptop and looked up at the stars. Somewhere in a federal prison, Marcus was serving his sentence. Somewhere in an Oregon cemetery, Bianca was buried under a simple stone marker. And here in Portland, Julian Mercer was living the only revenge that truly mattered, a life of integrity, authenticity, and genuine love. The ashes had burned back into something pure. The story was complete.